What's going on, homies? It is Trevor. In OBS, in one of these recent updates, I noticed to the filters that they added this 3-band equalizer. Now, for the longest time, inside of OBS, whenever I would go to record, I would have to do two things. One, I would have to download a secondary VST for an equalizer, because there wasn't one inside of OBS. And now that they have this new 3-band equalizer, I figured as an audio engineer as well that I could provide a little bit of insight on how exactly you should be setting these up. Because a lot of equalizers, they can go up to really however many bands you want to. And so I decided, while I was able to utilize this VST plugin that I downloaded recently, to see exactly how all of these frequencies change whenever you use a 3-band EQ. By the way, this is a parametric EQ and has this beautiful little visualizer of your voice, so you can see exactly what it is that you're doing to it whenever you EQ your vocal. And this is what I've came up with. Now, I'm going to look at this through the perspective of somebody who's relatively new to this and maybe has some lackluster or overall budget equipment that they're using for their audio setup. Now, as far as this high band right here, whenever I max this thing out and pull up this parametric EQ, you can see that there is a bunch of noise that's almost hitting 0 decibels between 5 and 10K. Now, whenever I completely bottom this out, and I'm so sorry for my voice, I know this sounds awful, and then I go back to this, you see that it, unless I am absolutely yelling, there is a big spot missing right here. And I'm really trying my best to bring as many sibilants into this as possible so you can see just how much of an impact it makes. So for people that are wanting to mess with this EQ, most budget-oriented microphones will already have a pretty good amount of high-end. And even if it's like an industry standard low-budget mic, like the one that I'm using, which is the SM57, you might want to limit adding highs and keep it around +2 to +4 decibels. And I really wouldn't go much farther. Now, moving on to the medium band. Post-edit Trevor here. I meant mid, not medium. I meant mid. Kind of like me. What I've found, so I don't have to put y'all through more torture of changing these audio settings in real time, I figured out that this mid one is pretty damn important. In most microphones that you'll have nowadays, whether they're good or bad, you'll find a pretty big problem frequency between 2 and 300. That's usually where the mud, so-called, is coming from. But this mid slider on the 3-band equalizer actually expands all the way from 200 hertz to 1000 hertz. And technically, all of this area can benefit from subtractive EQ, but since it covers such a broad range, I would definitely also limit just how much you go down on this. Now, the mids are pretty forgiving, especially whenever it's like a commentary setting or something where there's not a lot of background noise, because a lot of your voice lives here. So I would limit this to a maximum of -6 decibels, and I'm finding it pretty comfortable around 4. But it's definitely beneficial to turn this down a little bit. So I would say definitely -3 decibels, but I wouldn't go much farther than -6. And now we move on to the least impactful, and that's the lows. I'm using the SM57, like I said, which for all intents and purposes is pretty much exactly the same as the SM7B. And they're pretty good on the lows, but more budget-oriented or, in some cases, low-quality microphones are going to be pretty lacking in the lows. And unfortunately, like taking lows away, there's not much there to begin with. All you're really going to do is introduce types of distortion and muddiness from really trying to bring something out of nothing. But if you do find that it is a little too bassy, you can always slide this down. The frequency range doesn't really matter that much, because really we're just looking for a clear voice and not necessarily an overly warm and saturated, boomy radio voice. So if you find it too boomy, you can turn this down a couple of decibels or turn it up a couple decibels if you find it's too thin. But really, the lows are pretty insignificant. But overall, 5 to 10K for the highs, all the way from 1K down to 200 hertz for the mids. And then the lows are pretty much everything below that, 150 hertz and below. Not very significant. So that is how this 3-band equalizer works. And keep in mind that this chain works just like an insert chain for a DAW. You need to do all of your correcting first before you compress. Just a little nugget there. And also, if they would just add in a de-esser plugin for OBS, you would have absolutely everything you need to sound professional, no matter what equipment you use. You can always download this de-esser and copy these settings. You'll want it right after the compressor and right before the limiter. And this will take pretty much most of the plosives and S sounds, very annoying frequencies out of your voice, and it'll sound great. But I figured I would just give my little bit of insight being an audio engineer myself. Hopefully this helped. If you liked the video, give it a like. And if you want some more tutorials on OBS or just, sound design and audio engineering in general, especially whenever it comes to getting your audio settings right in games, let me know down in the comment section below. All right, thanks a ton for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.